You're listening to the Hey Presley podcast, episode number 10 with Taylor Wray and Tommy Mack.
In our modern world, we think it's only a physical practice, when practicing yoga is really, there's more about it of how you live. So the practice for you might look different from me, and you're practicing yoga. So that can come out as meditation. That can come out as like, if you have physical limitations and you close your eyes and you connect to your breath, right there you're practicing yoga, because it's all about just connection. So the physical practice is literally one tiny layer to the whole world of what yoga really is.
So Taylor is an incredible yoga instructor with an amazing story about how she came into the practice before ultimately centering her career around it. And Tommy is her boyfriend, who is an exceptional photographer and videographer. And together they form the brand Livin and Flow, where each week they upload beautiful yoga instructional videos for every skill level. They lead retreats in exotic places like Costa Rica, and they host free yoga classes in the park throughout the Phoenix area. Before this episode, I personally have always kind of thought yoga wasn't for me, which was a really big motivator for me to sit down and do this interview to really understand it more. We cover all aspects of the practice in this conversation, including what yoga actually is and how the variations differ, and then how to get started, especially if you're understandably a little nervous and not so bendy, but you still want to get your zen on and rock some stretchy pants. And stick around, because they tell this story about how a tropical storm caused them to get stranded on an island in Costa Rica while leading their last retreat, and it is so good and incredibly powerful. There is so many good takeaways in this one. Please enjoy my conversation with Taylor and Tommy. So, Taylor, I'll start with you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that you've been practicing yoga for 12 years now.
Yep.
So can you tell me a little bit about how you got interested in it in the first place, and then progressing that into how it's become such a big part of your life?
Yeah, definitely. So yoga for me it's just part of, like, I feel like who I am at this point. And I started the practice and the journey really young. I was 15 when I found it, and I found it really in a really dark period of my life. So I was 15, and at that point I was really depressed, really anxious, really just questioning who I was, not even understanding how to connect with myself. So I was partying a lot, and I was doing drugs at that point for about 2 years. So I started really young, partying at 13 years old, and just living a really negative lifestyle, with also wanting to not be in that lifestyle. Like, I already knew, like, this isn't really me, but I felt really deep in it. And it was really just a hard period, being a teenager also. So I found yoga at 15. I stepped into a studio for my first time. I did like a home video for the first time. I was like, this is awesome. It was like super old school, and like, I loved it. And then I ended up going to my first class in a studio, and it was packed, mat to mat, like a really like heated vinyasa flow class. The music was like super loud. So I walked in 15, and I was like, well, this is amazing. And I felt just like the energy of the people was incredible, but also the practice itself was like something I've never experienced. And the thing that I experienced in that first class of like being in a real practice in a studio with others was a feeling of feeling connected to myself, and feeling, I guess you could say, high, like a yoga high, for the first time without a substance.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, what is this? And really it was just, I was connected to myself through movement, through breath, through like good energy and positive vibes. And I was just hooked. I was like, wow, this is so incredible. Like, I felt like I was home, and I was just like, this is it. But that's obviously not where it just like went straight uphill from that point. It was like the start of really just a whole lifestyle. Yeah. And at that point, I didn't just like stop the partying. It was very much interweaved with each other, yoga within partying, and sometimes more yoga and less partying, and sometimes more partying than yoga. Which then led me to years later trying to get sober and relapsing, and just a whole journey with that. And yoga, meditation, and just the lifestyle was my way of becoming sober and, stopping that negative lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And then I went through my first teacher training 6.5, 7 years ago.
Wow.
So it's been incredible. And at this point, you know, I'm 6.5 years sober, teaching now, but it's really just been, like I said, it feels like it's who I am at this point because I started so young, which I'm really grateful for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And tell me, what about you? Were you doing it before you guys met?
Yeah. Yoga was like okay, so I was doing a lot of martial arts. I used to do Muay Thai and MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. And during that time, I wanted something that wasn't so intense. I wanted something that was like a yin to the yang. So I would do yoga as like cross-training, but also just to do something that I didn't feel like I had to be super good at, but still felt good.
Yeah.
And that was probably like 8 years ago. And I don't do it as often. I'm like a support role in this like yoga world that Taylor lives in.
Yeah.
But I do love it.
Yeah.
And I do it occasionally.
I love, we'll get more into this later, but I love that you said that you didn't have to be good at. And I have done yoga, not a ton, but I remember one specific class that I took. The instructor said, don't worry if you're good or bad at this, like you just are, like you're just here.
Yeah.
And I think it was the space I was in too, but it was like exactly what I needed to hear because as a not so flexible athlete that's maybe good in other sports, I feel so vulnerable in yoga because it's not something I'm great at. So for her to say, you know, you're not good or bad, you're just here. I'm like, yeah, that's such a cool way to look at it.
It really is. And that's something that comes up for most people.
Yeah.
Is this thing of saying I can't go to yoga because I'm not good at it. And that breaks my heart in a way because that's not what yoga is about. So it's, you know, really trying to shift from that space of not being X, Y, or Z and really, like you said, feeling vulnerable. The moment someone walks into a practice or a yoga class or steps onto their mat is an expression of vulnerability. And I think it's amazing, but it's like you said, like it's just, you just are, like just to allow yourself to be and to experience without comparison or judgment.
Yeah.
And everyone that's in class, like it's such a different background. Someone's maybe been practicing 10 years and then the person next to it's their first class. So it's hard to say like who's good or bad. There really isn't.
Right. And what do you tell people that are scared to try their first class? Because I know, you know, seeing people that they say a pose and then you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can get into that. Or you're like trying to keep up and then you're behind. Like, what do you say to people that worry about, have those anxieties about starting?
Yeah, it's challenging because you know, as a teacher, I really want to cater to all levels. And so personally, I like to really offer different variations. And I like to use variations more than modifications because modifications almost creates a less than versus what you should be doing.
I like that.
So variations are just your variation.
Yeah.
And some days for me, like I'm going to take a variation that's more gentle just because that's what my body needs then. But I tell people like just try it. Like show up without comparison, without judgment, because it really is a practice.
Sure.
It's like anything else. You don't understand it the first time, the first 10 times. It's a learning process for sure.
Yeah. And it's, you know, kind of similar to what I tell people when they're nervous to start CrossFit is nobody's looking at you. Like it feels like everybody's judging you, but nobody is.
Right.
You know, and it's kind of getting past that.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about like what yoga is, which I realize sounds kind of silly, but I think that a lot of people don't fully understand the practice and just kind of assume it's for flexible, mindful people that wear stretchy pants. And and I know there's different kinds, so maybe you can kind of address a little bit about like the popular ones or how that differs from what you teach.
Well, yoga itself, the word yoga means to unite the mind, body, and soul. So it's all about a union. And to create that space, you know, we're in our modern world, we think it's only a physical practice. When practicing yoga is really, there's more about it of how you live. So the practice for you might look different from me, and you're practicing yoga. So that can come out as meditation. That can come out as like, if you have physical limitations and you close your eyes and you connect to your breath, right there, you're practicing yoga. Because it's all about just connection. So the physical practice is literally one tiny layer to the whole world of what yoga really is. And it's a lifestyle. So in it, there's what's called the 8 limbs of yoga. And it's like a path, I guess you could say. It's like principles to practice. And it's you never get it, you never perfect it. It's just like a daily, lifelong practice.
Yeah.
And like I said, the physical part is only one of 8.
That's really cool.
So there's a lot more behind it. So style-wise, there's so much out there, and there's the physical where you're going to show up and you're going to feel like I got a good workout, I sweat a bit, and you feel like a mindfulness from it. You feel connection to yourself. There's meditation. There's restorative and yin. That's very, very gentle. There's beginner. So there's just so many styles. So that's one thing too, is if someone doesn't really understand what style they're going to, and it might not be the right fit.
Yeah.
And you can, maybe that's not the one for you. Like I know Tommy, he enjoys vinyasa flow and it's a little bit faster paced, but what he really likes is gentle yoga. Like he wants to slow down a lot, and that's what he prefers.
If it's yin, I'm in.
Yeah, so it's also like try different styles to see what your fit is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite to teach?
I have a few. I really, like I said, like the main I teach in a group class form is Vinyasa Flow, which is really just means to link breath to movement. So every movement is guided by a breath, and it's a very fluid practice. So the poses link into the next pose, and I really like it because it feels like a dance in a way. I love to teach that, but I also love to teach yin and restorative, which is all grounding poses, really slow. You don't even stand in the practice. It's all on the mat. So it's really gentle, feels really great. I also love to teach yoga nidra, which is a guided meditation.
Oh, cool.
So it's like a guided visualization practice, and that's incredible. That's actually Tommy's favorite practice ever.
That's awesome.
It's wild because the guided meditation starts, and when it stops, like 45 minutes or an hour have gone by, and you don't even realize it.
That's crazy.
People are always like, wait, how long was that? And I'm like, 45 minutes. What? That was like 10 minutes, I thought.
It's so relaxing.
So it takes you into
so
a really
cool.
Deep space to heal.
Yeah.
To heal, to rejuvenate. It's 45 minutes to an hour of yoga nidra for the body is like 4 hours of sleep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And is that kind of, all the different practices, are those things you're exposed to during your teacher training, or are they things you've kind of sought out in your experience?
Yeah, I'd say it's an evolution of trainings since I started training about 7 years ago. Choosing one teacher training typically is maybe like a vinyasa flow training where you might be exposed to little bits of something else.
Sure.
Restorative or yin, and then yoga nidra I sought out on my own and did a whole training for that. So it's also just kind of layering upon where I choose to want to go and study.
Yeah. I think the guided meditation thing is really cool because there's so much research to support, and there's new books and celebrities coming out all the time talking about the value of meditation. Mm-hmm. But, people like me, and I think a lot of my clients and a lot of my friends are so like go all the time that it's hard to we find it very difficult to just be quiet.
Slow down.
So the guided is a really good kind of bridge to being able to, in theory, eventually just be calm and quiet.
Yeah, and that's totally it. You nailed it, because a lot of people might think meditation, I can't do it because I can't stop thinking.
Right.
And the practice isn't about to stop your thoughts, because no one will ever just stop thinking. It's about observing your thoughts to be able to connect to them and to have awareness and say, oh, these thoughts I can release because I'm having the same negative pattern thinking over and over. Let me try to shift from that and into a higher, more elevated type of mindset for myself. So really it's just about connecting more to yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what is there to gain from a consistent yoga practice, aside from the assumed increase in flexibility?
Yeah.
I mean, what other things do you feel like people learn on the mat that apply to other areas of their life or that you've experienced, or you tell me?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, like you said, the flexibility, I say to people, or I notice most people show up to yoga for the physical practice and then they end up leaving with so much more. And it's really a gateway into, you come for the physical because you hear it's good for your body. Maybe you have pain or tension and tightness, so you come for that, but then you start to realize how much more you actually gain mentally by feeling more relaxed, more grounded, learning how to manage stress, sleeping better, your relationships, because you're more connected to yourself and more grounded. Then when you go out off the mat into your relationships, if you're feeling heated, you can take a deep breath instead of reacting like maybe you used to. And I practice that, and we both do. Yeah. And it's not perfect every time. It's like I said, it's always a practice. So it's never you reach it and attain it.
Right.
How about for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is the end of the practice, the Shavasana, and just having moved your body so much and in so many different ways that you're finally able to let go of tension in your body, which makes you able to let go of tension in your mind. And that physical practice, to me, is like the key to unlocking magic and visions for that meditation at the end.
Yeah.
So I like to do even a short yoga practice before I meditate. And that meditation for me lately has been my biggest source of inspiration and motivation, because in that meditation, I feel like I'm able to just receive inspiration and ideas and faith and willpower to carry them out. So the physical practice makes space for that. And that is the thing that has been changing my life. So
I love that.
Big.
I love that you talked about making space. And actually that was my theme in this morning's class when I taught. So that's funny you say that. Was, we show up to practice to feel better. And really let's talk about making space. Physically, we're going to let go of tension and create space physically, right? But also mentally and emotionally is, what are you holding on to mentally? What kind of thoughts or anxieties that are just keeping you here without giving you space to grow past it or beyond that?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're thinking about what to focus on for the classes, is that kind of like a by day, or you feel out the class based on what you think they need?
Yeah, totally. It's in not every class I teach, I set an intention. It's always, I guess it's a by day for me. So sometimes I'll practice in the mornings before I go and teach, and in that practice myself is when I feel out what I want to talk about. Also, I'm inspired a lot by what I'm personally going through in my life. And right now it's about making space. Yeah. And it's about making space for new opportunities. So I typically will speak from what I'm experiencing or needing to learn also.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. And I'm sure that helps make it sound so much more genuine too, right? Because then you have this authentic connection rather than just, here I'm trying to hand you, information.
Totally.
And so how did you two meet?
I love saying this. Do you want to say it?
Say it.
It was love at first swipe.
Oh, I love it.
Tinder.
That's amazing. Oh, I've never heard that phrase before. That's awesome.
Tinder worked for us. Oh, there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody has a friend that they say it works for, so now I have one.
Yeah, cool.
I'm a believer, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she believes in it so much, she's still on it.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
I'm just kidding.
Amazing. Yeah. And so you both had kind of your separate passions, and then did Livin and Flow grow from you guys trying to figure out how you can kind of collaborate with that?
It happened super organically, really, because with him just loving photography and videography, and we would take photos of me, flowing and practicing yoga, or photos and we were traveling, and we just kept sharing it, and it just really unfolded as this beautiful thing that we created together.
Yeah.
Taylor came home one day and she goes, "What do you think about livinandflow.com?" And I said, "I feel like it should have a G. I think it should be livingandflow.com." She's like, "Well, I just got the website and the email address and the Instagram, so it's Livin and Flow."
And Livin with a G was taken, but I actually really liked
Livin
better. Yeah. And then he ended up liking it better too.
Yep.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day about buying a domain and that whole process, and they were like, "How much was yours?" And I was like, "Well, there's not a lot of press leads, so it worked out really well in my favor."
Yeah, totally.
But I've heard stories about people wanting domains that are taken
crazy,
and they're so expensive or hard to get. So that kind of worked out well. That's funny.
Yeah. And that was when we were in Italy, is when we actually created more of the brand of Livin and Flow. We were just traveling for 6 weeks through Europe.
That's awesome.
And just had time also to really be creative.
And create that space to be creative, really.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the challenges or things you've learned working together while also being in a relationship? How do you navigate some of that stuff?
Where do we start?
Do you have
can you narrow it down?
Yeah, well, I guess a big thing I'm wondering is there boundaries? When you go travel, how do you keep from wanting to work or talk about work all the time? And when you're home, and if you're maybe going through a disagreement, how do you navigate that as it relates to your work too?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so One area where we've set a boundary is actually with the Livin and Flow brand, because we're working on our separate brands so much. And there's a lot we want to do with Livin and Flow, but it started getting stressful. It's like, okay.
It stopped being fun for a minute there.
Yeah. So we had to just pump the brakes and say, like, the stuff we do through Livin and Flow is going to be fun, because you have to, like, turn on the flow to be living in flow, right? And that stops when we're not having fun. And then how to keep from talking about work, that's pretty tough.
That's very hard for us.
Have a system for that.
We haven't created, Sometimes we'll just say, like, okay, we're being really serious. Like, we'll notice that, like, there's just been so much seriousness and hustle and work that we like, okay, like, let's just have fun. Yeah. Let's, like, stop for a second, take a breather, and really try to lighten, keep it lighthearted for a bit. But we haven't really created, like, a set, like, okay, hey, pump the brakes, like, let's stop. Sure. It's more, I guess, a moment-to-moment experience in that.
Yeah, it usually just builds up, and we're doing too much, and then we're stressed out, and we're saying, why are we so stressed out? Let's just have fun.
Yeah, why are we not having fun? Like, that's what it all comes back to.
Yeah, so we're working on that one.
Yeah. And I've heard the old gym that I used to work at, there's a couple that owns it, and they were telling me how, like, they had specific, like, okay, when we're at home, we don't talk about the gym kind of things. Yeah. And in a way, I can see how that's beneficial. But on the other, like, I would hate to have, like, this really creative idea for the business and feel like I couldn't talk about it over dinner because I'm violating the rules. So I kind of like the moment by moment, being aware of how you're feeling and saying, okay, are we talking about this too much? Are we having fun? Kind of reevaluating.
The thing with doing it with your partner is that, we're each other's number one go-to for all ideas and concerns and worries and crises and joys.
And doubts and
Yeah. So that's being there for each other, whether it's for work or for personal or whatever
it is,
is really important. And I think our brands are so intertwined with us and our own stories that, teasing apart what's a personal doubt versus, like, what's a work doubt, sometimes it's the same thing.
Hard. Yeah.
For example, like, money for me as starting my own business and learning about my psychology with money, those two are one and the same. Sure. My business isn't going to grow if my personal mindset doesn't grow. Yeah. So that's what's exciting about having your own brand as an individual, but also super challenging.
Yeah. And it's also really great that we both do have our own brands that we're working hard on, because I do feel like we both get so excited and we actually feel like we can share with each other. Right. Versus maybe a partner, one of them like out doing something like this and the other one maybe feeling like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Which I know and I've seen a lot of, and it's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But I do feel excited that we both have something so big that we're always like, this is amazing, or how do I do this? Or I'm terrified. Right. Both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. It seems really nice that you're able to have your own businesses in a sense, but then also this shared one. So kind of depending on the space that you're at, you can kind of pour into whatever at the time. Yeah. I love that.
The other thing too is communication, because that's that's truly the biggest one, which we've had to learn the most and still learning every day with each other, is really truly learning how to communicate. And we do go to couples therapy, and it's been one of the best things for us too. So we've really learned a lot about each other, about our own triggers that we end up triggering each other back and forth, right? Yeah. So really learning how to work through that, which bleeds right into the business as well.
Yeah, there really is no separation.
And I heard on, I think it was another podcast where somebody said that, couples don't usually go to therapy or counseling until they're premarital, going to get married. And at that point, it's kind of late. Now you've agreed and you are going to work through these things. And they talked about how when you first meet somebody, talk about if they'd be willing to go, do that with you, because totally, it can expose all kinds of things that just help you.
Totally.
Yeah, there's a stigma around it. If you're going to a therapist, then you've got a problem that you can't work out on your own, which we all have problems. Yeah. And probably most of them we would solve better with somebody else. Totally. Whether that's your partner or your friend or your mom or dad or a therapist. It's kind of if you, it's like working out. And I think for athletes, it's important to think of the mental side of things. in this way. What's my point? My point.
It's the mental part of fitness.
Yeah, it's like a mental part of fitness.
Look at that communication.
Yeah, so communication, but also just knowing, like, I have to learn myself and Taylor has to learn me, so we can communicate back and forth. But some of the things that, I think or say negatively about myself translate into my business, and when I did sports, it translated into sports. So that mental side of it is huge.
Sure. And so, Tommy, with your media background, and, I've witnessed you two start and grow this amazing YouTube channel, which has been awesome. And then, with like funny lifestyle blog stuff and obviously yoga practice stuff. And then, Taylor, I saw that you began like a yoga mentorship program. And so the theme here, is that you're both able to use your skills and collaborate and make these really awesome things that are able to impact people in different ways. So is that kind of the goal, is to be able to create these different mediums where you're able to reach different people? Or, how do you go about using these different channels literally to reach people?
So YouTube is... Okay, tell her about your Rockstar experience today.
Oh, that's funny. Well...
This is a side anecdote.
This is a great little story. Yeah. So we just started in January, once a week, releasing a yoga instructional for people to follow on YouTube. And someone that comes to my class told me after today that her 6-year-old daughter practices them almost every day.
Oh my god!
But she thinks I'm a celebrity because I'm on TV,
right?
Because they pull it up on the screen.
Oh, that's amazing.
So she doesn't know the difference between a movie star and a YouTube person.
You know, you were so famous.
So she was saying that her daughter was like, "Oh, Mom, she's famous? That's your teacher? She's beautiful." Aww. Just so cute. And she was in the childcare today, so she's like, "Can she meet you?" I was like, "Of course."
Oh my gosh.
So I met her and I talked to her and thanked her for watching and for doing the yoga, and her mom's like, "She is so starstruck right now." I was like, that is the cutest thing. It was great.
That story made my day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we reach people that we'd never even thought of, when we were making the YouTube channel. And a lot of that, here was what I thought we were going to do with the YouTube channel. I thought, we got to do this, and we have to post or
go really hard.
Go hard and put videos out, all the time.
Day,
Right. And we're consistent. We're once a week with the yoga instructionals. And my vision was to grow just into the internet world somehow. But what has actually happened is it's been an added bonus for the people that are already in our community. Yeah. So if they can't make it to Taylor's class, they can do a class at home with her, and they love it. And so that I guess that's one way where I thought we were going to reach other people, and we still do reach new people.
We've added value to people that are already fans.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And, through Instagram, that is, we don't really have an audience defined for that.
Just sharing.
Social media is, it's a little harder.
And then, but the biggest thing, and this is Taylor's big thing, is community and connection, but the number one way that we have...
Face-to-face for me is my number one, for sure. And like you said, the mentorships, retreats, workshops, events, that's really... I just am all about connecting personally, face-to-face.
It's so much more fun. Yeah. I actually deleted Instagram from my phone for 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I would find, if I was sitting somewhere waiting, or just had a moment where I was bored, instead of going to Instagram and whatever, mindlessly scrolling or thinking about posting a story or something, I'd text a friend or a family member or a business connection, and it just felt so much more personal and productive.
Yeah. Somebody showed me how you do something in your settings on your phone, and basically you can just double click the home screen, and it switches it from black and white to normal. And it's really cool, because then if you just leave your phone on black and white most of the time, it's crazy how much less you want to scroll, because everything's just not as visually appealing. And so I've done it, and it's really cool, because then I'll go to open up Instagram, I'm like, well, it doesn't look that cool. And then I'm not really, interested anymore. But then if there's something specific I want to see, I can just double click really quick. It's really neat.
Yeah,
you gotta show us that.
Yeah, that is cool. And that's, because even Tommy was that was one reason, but the reason why he stopped was because, and which I find myself doing all the time, is the comparison thing.
Oh my gosh, totally.
Right? When we get on Instagram or anywhere, social media, and we see I see other yoga instructors
They're
doing
posting
something,
more,
or he sees photographers doing stuff, and we compare. We judge ourselves, and then we doubt.
Yeah, totally.
So
And just removing that creates space once again to just do your own thing.
Yeah.
Totally. And I heard it was in Essentialism. I don't know if you've read that, but he talks about focusing on the essential things in your life and eliminating, you can't do everything. So how do you pick your priorities? And it's a really good book. But one thing he talks about is people think that prioritizing or creating space is about having more time to do nothing, like creating space to do nothing at all. But really, it's creating space for adding more things you love.
Yeah.
And I think that's a common misconception, is creating space, and then people are like, to do what? Like sit on my couch and be bored? Like, why would I want that?
To spend more time in your zone.
Right. Yeah. And to do things, if you have that space, then you get to choose how to use it rather than letting it choose you.
Yeah. That you just have to, or that you're used to doing.
Right.
I love that.
And so I saw you guys have done lots of yoga in the park events, which I think is just the coolest thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, what made you decide to start that? And were you nervous nobody was going to come?
Oh, yeah.
I would be so nervous.
I was terrified. I am kind of blown away by how it's turned out. And I started it, it's over a year.
Over a year.
It's a year and a half ago, probably. That I literally was like, well, here's what it really comes down to is I wanted to lead events. I wanted to be out there leading yoga events. And I realized I think I was waiting for someone to ask me. It's like, okay, well, you got to go create your own opportunities, really. And that's what it comes down to. So I did. It's like, I want to lead a yoga event outside. I think that's the coolest thing. It's beautiful out. I want to bring community together. And so I did. So I created Yoga in the Park, and I had a core group of ladies that were down. So I knew I had my 4 or 5.
Come. Yeah.
And the first one I launched, 25 people came.
That's amazing.
So I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool. Yeah. And it's donation-based. And I typically donate for Halo Animal Rescue. A percentage goes to them. Sometimes I'll do a special event for someone else.
Sure.
We did the AZ Cancer Foundation for children, and raise money for other charities as well. But and it's turned out to be there's a break in the summer, it's too hot.
Yeah.
But it's as often as I can do it. It's on Saturdays with the farmers market, and lately it was great turnouts, about 40 people coming out. It was so fulfilling. So it also is a learning experience on. You just got to go create your own opportunities and not wait for someone to ask you.
Yeah, that's such a good take-home point, because I'm sure there's so many people that think, I would love to do X. Mm-hmm. And it's well, then why don't you go do that? Right? Instead of just waiting for the opportunity to show up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Should I tell my pizza party story? This is that worked really well for Taylor.
But what didn't?
But what didn't was when I was in 7th grade, I attempted to throw a pizza party.
This is the most heartbreaking story.
I know, I'm already sad.
Yeah. And I wrote out little invitations, and I gave them to people at school. And I made some rookie mistakes. I didn't
Such a rook.
I know.
So, no parents were involved who would actually give permission for the kids to go somewhere.
Give them the ride.
To drive
there. Exactly. And I lived out in the boonies, so so nobody came. But there were pizzas, but...
I can't handle this.
I know, I'm just picturing short little you
Tommy,
with
I know.
a bunch of pizza and nobody there.
I know.
That's sad.
That's really sad.
It feels just as sad as you're imagining it.
That's tough.
But I learned an important lesson, and that is to get people who are down for your event before even launching it. So having that core group of people like you did for Yoga in the Park and for retreats.
What we do for retreats.
Yeah, is make sure that you've got a handful that are down, because they'll spread the word, and at least you've got that.
And that you're putting your time and energy into it for at least 1 or 2 people.
Yeah. And then you can kind of, when you're designing it, kind of picture them and design it around them, which kind of helps give you some direction. Because I think that's another hard thing when you're trying to design events, is you're picturing this broad group of people. Mm-hmm. So then you're what kind of food do they like, or what kind of whatever,
what kind of content, or what am I going to share?
But if you think about the 4 ladies are going to come and design for them, chances are the other people will like similar things. It makes it a little easier. That's cool. And so that was something else I wanted to ask you about is the yoga retreats. I know you guys have gone to beautiful places like Costa Rica and Sedona. So can you tell me a little bit about like what those entail, and then maybe like a story or two of your favorite kind of memorable experiences from those?
Got a good story. Yeah, well, retreats have always also been something that I've always wanted to do, and I have to say some of the highest fear involved as well with creating a retreat and really putting yourself out there in that form. Traveling somewhere and hoping that a group of people go with you.
There's so many variables that could go wrong.
So that was always a dream of mine, and like I said, I had actually the same core group of ladies down for the first one for Costa Rica last year in October. So we did Costa Rica last year, Sedona in the fall, early this year in February. We're going back to Costa Rica in July, and then back to Sedona in the fall in October. So the retreats are awesome. It's a Livin and Flow retreat, and it's, we both love it because it's also adventure, travel, experience, community connection, and it's all around yoga. I could not do it without Tommy as well, and I learned that. And I knew it before, but I learned just how much I really needed someone also. And I'm really grateful for Tommy because he gives me space to really focus on the yoga, the connections with people, and more emotional support. He's my emotional support, but he handles all logistics, social media, photo, video, schedule details, stuff that would be too much for me to focus on everything.
Sure.
So you want to start talking about our first retreat?
Yeah, my favorite memories from it.
Yeah.
My favorite memory is when the road that led to the yoga retreat center got washed away in a flood.
Oh my goodness.
And us and our yoga retreat guests were stuck on an island.
Yeah.
With no power.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So really that was the first retreat experience. We had 16 people with us, and halfway through the retreat in yoga in the morning, the rain started pouring, and it didn't stop. And then it really didn't stop.
It didn't stop for 2 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
2.5 days.
So the power went out later that day, and Tommy had us go out and check the only road out, but it was gone.
Oh my goodness.
So we were stuck, and power was out.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah, we did yoga.
Yoga, we carried on.
We kept the yoga retreat going, yeah. Right, it did create space, and what it brought up a lot of stuff for people. Some people were totally fine with it. I had 2 guys that I was on the fire crew with. They were both there, and they were this is like natural disasters or just like
in their
of the
wheelhouse,
job. Yep. So it was great for me to have them there.
Well, and Tommy really loved it. Like, he was thriving in the experience of okay, what do we do?
That really showcases kind of your personality traits being in a situation like that.
Yeah.
We had a good support network too. We had to do it with no cell communication at all, and no friends to help out. It would have been much more difficult.
Yeah.
But another big tool that we used to help people through it was yoga.
Yeah. A lot of meditation. We did the guided meditation. So it was really great because I've gone through a trauma-informed yoga teacher training before. Not for natural disasters, but for trauma or stress or, situations to really help in this aspect.
Yeah.
And I was able to really use a lot of tools in real time that I got from that training, which was really cool. So people were, some people had triggers of PTSD from this experience, or the unknown. We didn't know when we were going to get out, how, if we were really going to be okay. I knew deep down we would be, but you still don't really know.
Sure.
At that point. So people were, some people were having some panic attacks. Wow. And others, we had a 77-year-old, she came with her mom. That was her mom. She was loving it. She's like,
that's amazing.
If I get washed out to the ocean, I'm fine. We're
just my time.
Yeah, it's just my time. We're like, well, it's not our time. But then others that were really terrified. So we had to really be there for them. And, that first night, behind closed doors with Tommy, started crying. I was like, this is my yoga retreat. What the hell do we do?
Yeah.
And he was like, it's going to be okay. And he had a great survival plan, and him and his buds. I was like, I don't know what I'd do without them, really. So they had that, and then I was able to bring mindfulness and yoga, and we still practiced, and we connected, and we tried to work through in real time the stress and anxiety. So at the end, everyone was really grateful.
That's awesome.
Like for the experience, because they learned and grew through it so much.
Yeah, and potentially more than they would have.
Yeah.
Had you not had that experience.
Yeah.
Tell her how we got out.
Oh, by boat. We got out by boat.
Really?
Yeah.
Evacuated out by boat.
Yeah, the locals, so we were on a peninsula, and there was ocean on one side and there's lagoon on the other side. So what happened is it rained so much, the waters in the lagoon flooded the road and then washed it away. There were crocodiles, flooded down river because of it.
Mm-hmm.
The town that, when the storm initially started, the town that we considered leaving to go to got flooded also. So it was a good thing we didn't leave.
Yeah.
We were on one of the highest parts of the peninsula, but by highest I'm talking 3 extra feet. It was not like we were on a cliff edge or something. Yeah. But anyway, I was on the phone with emergency services and the U.S. Embassy and Canadian Embassy, and they couldn't pull us off the island. So who got us out was the locals. There was a caretaker of the property, and she was superwoman. She was on the roof was leaking. She was on the roof in the middle of the storm fixing
Get
it.
off from here. You don't have to do that.
We'll get wet. It's okay. But still cooking, and her family, when power went down, they cooked on wood stoves.
And we had limited water and food at that point to really, ration out, and that was crazy.
Yeah, so when the storm finally started to subside, the island got together, because they want to get off of it too, but they put together boats, and there was another resort that had guests there, and they got us all off the island first.
Wow.
And then they took care of themselves. But that was incredible. It was still another day until the U.S. Embassy called me, and they were like, we're working on a helicopter for you. And
We're
I was
that would have been cool.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah,
a good video.
Yeah.
But getting off by boat was awesome. An experience like no other. That's actually on our YouTube. I think that's the one you were watching. Yeah. So there's a whole story on that there.
That's so cool.
But it's a complete contrast to our second retreat, which was in Sedona, where the biggest emergency we had was one of our guests texted me at 10 o'clock at night, and she says, "There's a mouse."
That was literally the biggest thing to deal with.
We're on the tables. She sends a picture of people standing on the tables and chairs, and there's a mouse.
And so then that was the second retreat for us. We were like, wow, this is how easy it's
Right, we got this. Yeah. What a divine sign, that your first one would have something of that. It'd be one thing if the power went out and that was it. Yeah. But, to have such an incredible scale of events happen and thrive through it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was so calming for you too, because I think similarly I would have been panicking oh my gosh, this is my thing that I've put together and this is happening. And while leading them in mindfulness, it's kind of of course it's going to impact you too in a positive way.
Totally.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we got to give credit to people that were on the retreat too, because they
really were
troopers and
the
stepped
locals
up.
that helped you out.
It was just everyone combined was incredible.
It's cool to be in a place where you see the best of humanity.
Yeah.
Everyone pulling together. Yeah.
Love that. That's so cool. And so you have Costa Rica. You're going back to Costa Rica, right?
Yeah, a different month and a different location.
Yeah. Definitely better weather.
If you get stuck twice, they probably won't save you the second time.
Yeah, no, we're going in a great season and a great spot.
Awesome.
So that's in July. Super excited.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so one question I have for both of you that I'll let you answer separately is what fills up your cup or feeds your soul? Because I feel especially in yoga, but any really service-based business, the person giving the service, the person leading the class is pouring so much into those people that you can feel drained and feel like you're constantly putting energy into them. Yeah. So what feeds your soul and what kind of fills up your cup?
It's funny you ask this. We were just talking about this yesterday. I was sharing with Tommy. So for me, I would shifting from a student of yoga to a teacher is very different. And for me, once I became teacher and now teaching and wanting to always be student, and I am always a student, sometimes you also outgrow teachers as well, and that's part of the path. That's part of the process. Is some points your teacher is great for this period, and then you are ready for someone else.
Sure.
And lately, I've been really looking for a teacher because I love to be student also, and that's what fills me up. To then go out and teach and share, but also really just to connect more with myself. So right now I'm kind of in this like search of like who my next teacher is and like mentor and guide in a way of someone, I don't lean on them to show me everything, but to more so connect me back to myself is like just more tools to use. So that's something that I'm like in the process of. Teaching is a lot. It fills me up and it can be draining.
Totally.
So lately I've had to redo my schedule and actually release some classes so I can create more time for myself.
Yeah.
But really, I'm also, it's really hard because I love what I do. So I work a lot.
Right.
So then I'm working because I'm excited. I'm into it. I'm creating new projects, I feel like constantly. That sometimes then I'll all of a sudden feel really burned out.
Yeah.
And that's very, very challenging for me more than it is for Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really in that phase of like, okay, taking a step back to just slow down even, to just nurture myself, travel a little bit, really just even relax like in the house and like not be out teaching and giving.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about for you?
Family time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll hang out with our dog, and
that's
just the best. Quiet.
Yeah.
Being in the woods or just out in nature is really big for me. When we were just in Colorado and Taylor was doing a training, and I spent every one of those days like doing wildlife photography. But what really fills me up about that is just being on my own to like make decisions when and how I want them, and do I want to hike up this ridge or follow that trail, or I get to just like adventure and explore on my own with no boundaries, tons of space. That's very fulfilling to me.
Totally. I think go ahead.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna start putting my wildlife photography out there more. Not as a business so much, just as a place to express that thing that fulfills me.
Sure. That's awesome.
Yeah. Also, surfing is something that we both love. So, like, we're going to stay in Costa Rica for, like, 10 days after the retreat.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just for us. Just to fill up,
and you'll be
surf,
so
relax.
drained in the best way after. That'll be such a good way to recharge.
I've also learned that from the past retreats. Like, I need multiple days after to literally do nothing.
Totally.
Yeah, and just to be and enjoy it.
I think it's such a good point that you talk about traveling alone because, again, there's so many stigmas around things, but I think that people will think that maybe seems weird or whatever, but I've done it, and it is so valuable to, like, even if you're traveling with somebody you love, to not have to ask, like, what do you want to eat? Well, do you want to go up this mountain? Where do you want to go? It's like, it's really nice to just be able to follow wherever your heart or mind wants to go. Yeah. So what's next for Livin and Flow? What are you two working on building, or for each of your individual businesses too? What are you working on building right now?
Go for it, Taylor.
I'm working on now not even one. I feel like the biggest project I've ever taken on, and it's yoga. It's a 200-hour yoga teacher training. So I'm at the just finalized. It's going to be in January of 2019.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm at the very tip of the process of creating it and building it. And it's already the most exciting and terrifying experience.
Yeah.
So it's really awesome because I feel like in this process already, I've already grown and I've already been so uncomfortable that continuing it, and building it and growing it, more is going to come from it. But I'm so excited to be working with new teachers. Teaching for me was not easy in the beginning, and I had to really work through so much. And people now are shocked that it was hard for me.
I'm shocked that it was hard for you.
So I really do feel very connected to the challenges that come in as being a new teacher and learning how to teach yoga. So I'm super excited to actually be out there and hands-on working with people that are looking for that.
Yeah.
And it's huge. So that's exciting. We've got the yoga retreats, teacher training, workshops. Yeah. I'll be traveling a bit and doing a workshop for someone else's yoga teacher training on hands-on adjustments for class and stuff. So there's just a lot. Yeah.
I think that's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe give a little bit of background to people that don't know, and I'm not super clear on this either, is as far as being able to teach yoga, what does somebody need? Do they need 200 hours certification? And that's like kind of the barrier to entry if they want to teach it at like a gym?
Yeah, anywhere. Obviously, there's ways to get around it, which aren't very legit, but the typical process is to take a 200-hour teacher training. And that typically involves about 170 to 190 like contact hours on site learning time. And then the rest of the hours would be like at home and learning and homework and stuff. So it's a lot, but it's also not enough. Yeah. It actually isn't. Well, it's the start of it. It's the start of your foundation as a teacher.
That's what you're addressing. That's the big thing about your YTT is it's really focused on like the practical. Yeah. When you leave this 200-hour teacher training, you're going to have the skills to teach your first class right away or your first private or whatever.
Because I've started working with some newer teachers out of a teacher training that didn't even feel ready to teach. Right. So I kind of created like a mentorship program for them and building upon and like truly getting yourself ready to actually step out there, teach a class, understand how to speak someone through it and to create a safe sequence that makes sense in the body that is, not going to injure anyone. Totally. So it's like I said, like it's the foundation and it's like not enough. Right.
That's so cool because, I think that's absolutely a missing piece in your industry and really just in a lot of practices, in nutrition, as it relates to me, like there's some people that know a lot about nutrition. It does not mean they would be a good coach, right? It's a totally different skill or vice versa. Yeah. You might be great at talking to people and you don't have the education to back up what you're saying, and so I think that's been, a lot of people have gotten more into that, like the practical application of coaching. Yeah. So the practical application of this is how you actually lead a class is like awesome. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about it.
That's so cool. And tell me what you're building with your brand.
Yeah. So I just went full-time self-employed doing photography and videography in January.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I focus on storytelling. So if that's through photography or videography, doesn't really matter. The thing that I think my strength is and that Taylor has helped me realize and other people have helped me realize is how to tell a story. So I work with small businesses, personal brands, and large organizations to tell their story and communicate whatever they need to.
Love that.
Yeah, it's really fun. But it opens the door for more than just like commercial work.
Yeah.
So that could be telling stories that are interesting and exciting to me, and whether that's through photography or videography doesn't matter. It's something that I want to share with the world. So I get to be a conduit for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If you could ask everyone to do something specific that you believe would change their life for the better, what would it be?
I want to say breathing techniques because that's really what has helped me a lot. Even watching Tommy, watching it help him. But every single human has, we react and we get fired up. We get heated, we get anxious, stressed. And the breath truly, like even scientifically, helps to reduce that and helps to bring yourself back down really into your true space, your true self, to then be just really back to, connected to yourself and grounded, and then be able to decide from there or to act from that space. So breathing.
And where would somebody start if they wanted to work on their breathing technique? Is that something that's on your YouTube channel? Is there like things that they should look up?
Yeah, we haven't done a breathing technique video, but we will because that's something on the list. You can find it all over the internet. There's so much, and that's what's great is there's so many different styles and ways and different techniques for certain reasons. So I would say, since basically everyone has access to the internet, like start there, Google in like yogic breathing or anything like that is a really good start.
I've got two things. One is like writing down and understanding your own story. That's something we do at the end of your mentorships. And we'll be speaking at an event, but we can't tell you which one yet, but you know which one. And we'll be talking about that. And it has to do with branding, but even for the individual to sit down and write your story and figure out where like your pivotal moments have been and what has changed and shaped your life gives you a perspective on, okay, X, Y, and Z is why I think that I'm not good enough, or A, B, and C is why I think that I am good enough in this area. And that can help you shape your future. So it's hard to say what everybody should do, but I think that would be a really useful exercise.
Yeah.
And the second thing is combat sports.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think people have to compete necessarily, but there are lots of ways to train, even for a little while, because the lessons you learn about yourself and other people and what you do under stress and how to perform under stress, or even just how to deal with stress. Like the threat of physical violence is very scary for everyone.
Yeah.
But doing a class like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai or Judo helps you face that like innate natural fear and to some extent overcome it. And I think that is at like the root of a lot of people's fear just in life. You know, being around other people can be scary and physical violence is scary. But learning how to deal with that helps you translate that lesson to other things in your life.
Totally. I was listening to something once that talked about how if you feel, and especially I think he was referring to especially as a small female, but anybody, if you feel like you're not able to like defend yourself in a scary situation, that those kinds of thoughts like crowd your mind subconsciously. And so when you're out places or somewhere that's dark and it's like that fear can kind of manifest even if it's not totally something that you're aware of. And so because of that, I went and did a self-defense class at like a BJJ gym.
Cool.
And it was so cool. And I like absolutely loved it. And it was not that I think I'm like that tough anyway, but I was like, wow, I really didn't know what to do if somebody like were to try and attack me, because it was things that I never would have thought of or know how to do. And so it was humbling and it's empowering too to feel like you have some kind of skill set, right?
Totally.
Yep.
It helps you live a little bit more freer, I think.
Yeah.
When we first started, this is just a funny little side note. When we first started dating, I learned about his like judo background. I'm like, wow, so you can just bust those moves out at any moment? It's like, yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Don't need a warm up. Hope not. I might need a warm up now. I just pulled both my hamstrings.
Oh no!
Cleaning the floor this morning.
It's always those silly random things that hurt you. It's not the kicking doors down, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Funny. How can people connect with you too or get involved in the next event and stay in touch?
There's a few ways. So through our Instagram, there's Taylor Wray Yoga, and then our shared Livin and Flow, and then my website, taylorrayyoga.com.
You can also search for Livin and Flow on YouTube, and my new website is TommyMacStoryteller.com.
Perfect. And before I let you guys go, my final question for you is, what do you believe are the ingredients of a healthy life?
Ingredients of a healthy life. Ooh.
That's such a Hey Presley question.
Yeah.
It'll catch on here soon.
Yeah, I love it.
Play and fun. Connection to self and others. And self-acceptance, just like allowing yourself to surrender almost in a way of, you know, the hardships and the good times, and just to like literally, like, I guess that goes into flow, like just allow it to flow.
I gotta agree. The biggest things that have helped nourish my life have been self-acceptance, following my passions, and also accepting others.
Yeah, meeting people where they're at. I love it.
Yeah, so bake that in your oven.
All right.
Thank you so much for being here, guys. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Presley.
it.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Before you head out, just a few quick things. In the show notes of this episode, you can find all the links and recommendations that we discussed in this interview, so make sure you check that out. Secondly, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast because I have lots of good stuff coming up and I don't want you to miss out. And lastly, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions for me, suggestions for the show, or just want to spread the love, find me on Instagram at HeyPresley or head over to heypresley.com/podcast. Until next time, continue living your healthiest, happiest life, and we'll chat soon.